Welcome. This is Bill Swartz in Scottsdale with Rideshare Redemption. My story from riches to rags to rideshare. When I first met one particular old friend, I asked him what he did for a living. "I do what I know," he said boldly. "And what do you know?" "I know people," was his reply. The people business. An oxymoron, if ever there was one. If what you have to do entails being able to deal with people successfully, then you are in the people business. And yet it seems that everywhere we go, we have to choose between the word people and the word business. I knew a long time ago that if I chose to behave like an a-hole in certain situations, I could be successful, which is to say, get my own way. Once I was in the business of getting my own way, I became an a-hole like it was my job, which it was. But I never liked being that guy, and I'm working hard to not be him ever again. And so when I found myself in the UCars lobby one morning last week, in a position of what felt like first in, last out, as the lunch hour approached, and I was still waiting respectfully for some word, I had a choice to make. I stepped to the counter and leaned in so as to have a private conversation with Erin behind her computer. Erin is one of the two main faces of UCars in their Tempe lobby, the other being Austin. Erin listened patiently as I quietly explained that I was doing something terribly wrong. I had arrived first before they opened and remained last without explanation. I knew it was not her issue because I watched as she fielded impatient and or disrespectful people sensitively like a boss all morning. I further shared it seemed that getting satisfaction required being an a-hole to her, and that though I knew how to be one and used to be one, I would never be one to her or to the company. UCars is my partner, I told her. I will do whatever it takes to be successful. And if dealing with weekly car issues is what it takes, someone just needs to explain that to me, and I will make it work somehow. But whatever it was, I said, I'm obviously doing it wrong so far because I'm still sitting here and they are handled. And so I'm coming to you quietly for advice on how to do it right. What followed was the most sensitive, exceptional reaction from anyone serving me as a customer ever. But I didn't even know that yet. All I knew at this stage was that she made me feel less stupid instantly. She made me feel that not choosing between people and business in that moment, but keeping them in the same sentence as they should be, had been the right thing to do. As the lunch hour approached, Erin came out and asked me to follow her back into a little warren of cubicles, the corridors of power, as it were. I assumed there was some fixer who would now be nice and smooth my ruffled feathers. Past the cubes, she takes me into the corner office and introduces me to Joel Goldberg, the CEO of UCars. My first thought, I'm so glad I wore a nice outfit just in case. One never knows. I'd like to pause here to explain something in such a way as to put this moment into perspective. At the food bank, there is no complaint window. Let me say that again. At the food bank, there is no complaint window. Feel free to replace food bank with anything you should be grateful to have when you have almost nothing. Back to UCars. Now, I understand that in this relationship, you see UCars as a provider of a product other companies also provide, and that I as a customer have power in the relationship through my ability to change providers at any time. That is actually not true. Based on my research, I chose UCars as a rental car partner in my rideshare business, primarily because I did not feel any other company would rent to me as a result of using a credit check. UCars does not. However, come for the future, stay for the company is how this one's playing out for me. You may recall that Aristotle said the most important thing in persuasion is for a thing to be demonstrated. I sat down across from Joel Goldberg, the founder and CEO of UCars, and for the next 20 minutes by linear time, experienced Kairos, and stepped through that momentary rip to have an amazing exchange that couldn't have been scripted better by Aaron Sorkin himself. As I settled in, I realized that serendipitously I had just sent Joel a friend request on LinkedIn the day before. I tell him so. I go further. I tell my personal story. Joel shares some of his. There are surprising similarities. I make sure to tell him how much love I have for the front office staff. He addresses the car issue to my great satisfaction. He ends this part of the conversation by writing his personal cell number on a piece of paper and asking me to contact him anytime. Says he appreciates me as a customer. Now, in case you missed it, I am not, in my mind up until this point, a customer. I am a captive. Of course, that old attitude is now crumbling as we speak, making way for new thinking as a result of Kairos, that hole in time I keep talking about, which is now happening with Joel. The balance of the conversation is quite literally cinematic. We speak about rideshare in recent films and the role of companies like UCars, Uber, and others in the transformation of society in fascinating ways. The balance of details don't matter, but what does matter is how my relationship with UCars changed in the space of 20 minutes, which is how long it took for my situation to go from the ridiculous, waiting in the lobby, to the sublime, waxing poetic with an influential CEO in the rideshare industry. Several years ago, I made a vow to myself. I vowed that I would rise again in the social and economic food chain. I felt it was a mistake that I had been placed on the scratch and dent table of humanity. I knew someone would someday choose to believe in me professionally and would put their money where their mouth was and give me a chance. And when that happened, I would take it as a sign that I had found my new home professionally. Work is always how I served my community. It's how I served people. It's how I did mitzvahs, or what are good deeds in the Jewish Torah. And not working and not being able to bring value to people has been a torture. You may be familiar with the term ride or die. Your ride or die is that entity who would be with you to the end. Thelma and Louise were each other's ride or die. My dogs are my ride or die, personally. And now that I've experienced Kairos with Joel Goldberg, the CEO of UCars, I can honestly say that he and his company have become my official, professional ride or die. Thank you, Joel, and thank you for watching. Peace.